Good afternoon. I'm Attorney General Eric Schneiderman. I'm very proud to be here and glad to be back in Binghamton today with some of my great colleagues to talk about some issues that are very important to people here and people all over the state of New York. District Attorney Jerry Mollen, who is I've worked with a lot on a variety of issues, a great advocate on issues related to opioid abuse and heroin abuse, and want to talk more about that later. Assemblywoman Donna Lupardo, longtime friend and aggressive advocate for the region. Mayor Richard David, and some members of the council, and I do want to note that we have had a chance to work together with regard to the land bank and the provision of legal services through our HOP provider network that my office set up with settlement funds from some of the major banks that caused the crash of the housing market. Councilmember Joseph Micheletto, Councilmember Chris Papistrat, and Councilmember John Mazzo joining us today. And we are here essentially because at the beginning of every winter season, we have noticed that there are a whole slew of scammers that come out to take advantage of people in areas where you can get a lot of snow. And it is now the time to prepare New Yorkers and prevent them from becoming victims. We know that there's cold weather coming. Binghamton can get a lot of snow. The non-snow season here lasted 6 months, from late April to earlier this week, but that only beat Moscow by about 10 days. So this is a place that gets serious weather. I know and I talk to my colleagues who are here with me today and others, that the vast majority of businesses that are supposed to help people during winter months are responsible. And individuals help too. People chip in to help keep their neighbors safe. But there are people who specialize in scamming people in the winter because scammers, fraudsters generally take advantage of people who are a little bit desperate or anxious about something. And if you get a big snowstorm, shady contractors are always out there to exploit any sort of crisis, whether it's a weather emergency or something else. We had reports, and I'll talk about some of the cases we brought in different parts of the state related to this. We do want to alert the folks in Binghamton and the Southern Tier because we haven't had as much reporting of incidents. We think that there may be stuff going on here that we just haven't gotten word out of, but we have a 1-800 number, and our office here, and I'm also joined by the head of my regional office, Jim Schumacher, and Marty Mack, who's the Executive Deputy Attorney General for all of our regional offices. But all over the state of New York, my AAGs and our investigators are alert to this, and we wanted to take an extra step to get the word out here today. And we're talking about people who price gouge for services like snow removal and fuel delivery that are essential. Some of them try to get paid up front for services they never actually provide. The scams are reprehensible, and yet we see them perpetrated year after year. Just last month, we obtained a judgment against a snowplow contractor who took thousands of dollars from consumers in 5 counties in New York State, including Onondaga and Tompkins counties, for snow removal services that were never provided at all. They advertised, as this contractor did on Craigslist, and in this case, dozens, I think over 50 consumers, signed contracts requiring prepayment of hundreds of dollars, as much as $400. This is not even a subtle scam. He never showed up in anyone's home to plow any driveway. He made phony excuses and then disappeared with the money. Well, we caught him, and now he's banned from operating a business or owning a business in New York, and he's had to pay restitution to all of his victims. Earlier this year, we also brought a series of actions related to the freak snowstorm in Buffalo that occurred last year, and we've settled with companies that were charging double or triple what was the ordinary price for snow removal. All affected consumers now have received restitution. But the bottom line is that these scams can happen to anyone. The scammers communicate through every type of technology. They're very active on the internet. And we have some simple rules to protect New Yorkers from becoming victims. But the most important thing to do is to try and prevent yourself from being a victim of a scam. If you suspect that you are a victim of a scam, or you know someone else who is, please get in touch with our office. This is something that we are we're alert to. We've got lawyers who have experience in this area, and we want to help. The very simple rules that we've got over here are things that are not hard for any New Yorker to follow. First of all, in the immortal words of Smokey Robinson, you have to shop around. So it is amazing how many people just react to something that appears to be a good deal. Anyone who makes you an offer to provide services, it's usually a very bad idea to say yes in the initial conversation. You should shop around, see if there are others providing the services, and also you have the right to get a contract in writing. If you have an agreement with the contractor or someone to provide services, if someone will not put it in writing, there's something wrong with them. That's probably a deal you should walk away from. And you do not have to pay unreasonable advance fees. It's important to always negotiate to hold some money back, never pay the full price up front. It's amazing how many people fall for that. It's always a bad idea. And when you're shopping around, again, the internet brings scammers, but it also helps you find scammers. You can get online, check with the Better Business Bureau, suppliers, neighbors, ask for references if it's a really significant piece of work, like contracting to do renovations or repairs, and know your rights. This is all listed on our AEG website, but every consumer has 3 days to cancel after signing a contract for any work done on their home. And if you believe you're a victim of a scam, contact our office. We have a Consumer Frauds Bureau hotline, 1-800-771-7755. Very easy to remember, 771-7755. And most of the businesses in this community, again, most folks are honorable and want to help people out during tough times, including bad winter weather. But now's the time to prepare, and we're trying to get the word out around the state, but we really do want to be sure that in Binghamton, in Central New York, in the Southern Tier, that all consumers are alert to this, and that we're getting the same kind of feedback that we've been getting in other parts of the state. We do want to note that this is an unusual year, and we have to take steps to do better and better. I would be remiss if, before I finish my remarks, I didn't make a comment on the fact that the Road to the World Series now passes through Binghamton. I've been telling some of my friends back in New York City who seem to believe that ball players pop up like flowers in the spring, that in fact, I think 17 of the players who are in our National League champion Mets team came through the Binghamton Mets, and that's a great thing for this community. It's a great organization that we're very proud of. And now it's my pleasure to introduce District Attorney Jerry Mollen. As I said, the district attorney here has been one of the most outspoken advocates in the state on an issue that we've done a lot of work on in the Attorney General's office, opioid and heroin abuse. And he was an advocate when we passed the iStop system, the best prescription drug tracking system in the country, has been an advocate for a more aggressive approach towards dealing with the heroin epidemic. Actually, and I have to say, Assemblywoman Lepardo has been very active in this also. Partly as a result of this advocacy, I set up and are in the process of developing an interstate task force to share information about heroin dealing among different states. This had not existed before. And Binghamton being right on the border of Pennsylvania, it was an issue that D.A. Mollen was quite aware of. Next week, these efforts are coming to fruition because the National Association of Attorneys General, Northeast Region, which includes all of the state attorneys general in the Northeast, is making its signature issue for the coming year the development of the Interstate Heroin Task Force to unite in sharing resources, but most importantly, in sharing information. And there is no one who's been a stronger advocate for taking these steps than District Attorney Mollen. It's a pleasure to bring him up here today.
Thanks. I want to thank the Attorney General for coming here on this subject. Sometimes, in case you didn't know this, district attorneys and the Attorney General don't always agree on everything. I will say that Eric Schneiderman is willing to talk, communicate, discuss on any issue that's of common concern to a local community, district attorneys, and the Attorney General, and so many issues. He's personally been present at meetings, at discussions, and just has been a good friend to work with over the years. On the specific topic here, I want to say that scam people in this area, that being cold weather scams, take advantage usually of one thing, and that is when a snowfall comes in or severe cold weather strikes, there's two things that are happening. One is there actually is often an urgent safety threat, in particular to older residents. So I'm not going to reveal my mom's age, but she lives with one of my brothers in Binghamton. When a heavy snowstorm hits, she needs to be able to get out of that house. Now, you can say you should prepare, and that's certainly true. That should be a second part of the message. Even as you look at these rules, for an older person in particular to have to deal with 2 feet of snow that came in and making sure that they have food and ability to get out of the house to get the snow removed under short time pressure is incredibly difficult. So I'd say the first rule should be prepare ahead of time. So for instance, for somebody such as my mother, she needs to be in touch with the person who's going to remove her snow and do all these scouting decisions before that snowfall hits. And then what is so great about what the Attorney General is doing education. That's so important in prevention, because we've had cases where what will happen is now it's severe cold weather. And this could be the home heating oil scam or any other kind of scam. A person comes knocking on the door of an older person living alone, and now someone says, we'll do a free inspection of your furnace. They get into that house, they go down to the furnace, and now they tell the 85-year-old lady, listen, you've got problems. If you don't replace that furnace or get it fixed, it's going to blow up. And now they're under this, it's freezing cold, snowfall expected, and you've got a man at the door that's telling you, if you don't give me $5,000 to replace a pump or something else in that furnace, it's going to blow up and you're going to die. And if you think people don't say that, they do. So this is in this business about checking references and slow down and all those things. That's a scary moment. But if you know about this, and you sitting here, younger people for the most part, get a chance to talk to your parents, it's worth having a conversation. Mom, if anybody knocks on your door and says, you've got to do it now, let's go down to the bank and get money, call me. No matter what the crisis is, call me. It's an important caution, because the people who do this are just as bad as violent criminals, in my humble opinion. And so I thank the Attorney General. Their office always does tremendous work in consumer affairs and consumer affair protection. And I think this visit is an illustration of what they do for the community. I know that we certainly are not the ones who handle a lot of the complaints about scam artists. It's the Attorney General's people that do that, and we have a good working relationship with them. So once again, I want to thank the Attorney General for what he's doing on this score, and I think it'll help the community in the coming months. So thank you so much.
Thanks,
all right.
Thank you. And now I'd like to bring up someone who I've worked with for a long time, an extraordinarily aggressive advocate for Binghamton, for Broome County, and for this whole part of the state, and in a place that needs as many reformers as it can get, a true reformer in Albany, Assemblywoman Donna Laparta. Thank you.
You're extraordinarily aggressive yourself, I'd say.
It's a compliment.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me too. Certainly thank you for being here, and thank you for all the wonderful work you're doing. Former legislative colleague of mine and now really fabulous Attorney General. We get calls in our Assembly office all the time with various consumer concerns, and we feel very confident in making referrals over to the Attorney General's regional office. There's a fabulous and friendly group of professionals there. And I just wanted to say, if some of my constituents and those who are listening today would rather call the local office rather than the 800 number. I'm sure you wouldn't mind, Attorney General, if I gave out the local phone number, which is, of course, 607-251-2770. I know a lot of our seniors might feel more comfortable calling the local office, and of course, calling the 800 number, you'll get the locals will find out eventually, but it may be save a phone call. Again, we have a very cooperative relationship, and I can't say enough about the hard work that they do. And when I look at this list, I've made some of these mistakes myself. I think I've missed the get it in writing component a couple of times, or I've managed to not get the references. So I'm going to go back and we will certainly publicize this list and make sure that people understand that the Attorney General's office is here, not just winter, but there are scams going on all year round, and that we're very grateful for all of the assistance that they can offer us. So thank you.
Thank you. And now someone who I have, as I mentioned earlier, we've had the pleasure of working with, very much committed to the well-being of this community, and we're working together to get the land bank rolling and help demolish abandoned properties and rehab abandoned properties to sell for affordable housing. A good friend of our office, and someone that I've been very pleased to work together with for a number of years now, Mayor Richard David.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's always a pleasure of mine to welcome the Attorney General to Binghamton because he really is a committed partner to addressing a number of goals that we have for our community. In a very short time, he has identified areas and advanced initiatives that are in sync with many of the challenges facing the city of Binghamton. Whether it's in public safety, in spearheading a gun buyback program locally to take weapons off the street, whether it's coming up with funding for bulletproof vests for the men and women of the City of Binghamton Police Department to step in where the federal government unfortunately has not. The Attorney General is and has been there, as have the members of his staff locally and regionally. Whether it's economic development and focusing on our neighborhoods, working to identify funding for our local land bank corporation, whether it's dealing with housing vacancies and blight, identifying money for demolitions, putting properties back on the tax roll, dealing with banks who are not meeting their obligations when it comes to homeowners in our community. The Attorney General has been there. Now, if we could only get money for our roads, that could be the next program that you can come up with. You can come up with a brand new strategy or initiative to help us fix some of those roads, which, as he mentioned, are on the way to New York City as we support many of our local Binghamton Mets. The Attorney General is a wonderful partner to work with, and we look forward to having a long and successful and prosperous relationship. The City of Binghamton, when it comes to our population, like many upstate cities, we have an elderly population. Approximately 1 in 6 individuals in Binghamton is over the age of 65. That's approximately 16% of our population. And so I can tell you that I have received many of those phone calls from many vulnerable citizens who have been scammed after the fact, looking for answers on what happened, where to go for help. And I think not only these tips and guidelines, but an actual direction to point people is not only helpful after the fact, but in talking about awareness and education as we approach and enter the winter season. Because I can tell you some of those examples that the Attorney General mentioned, whether it's snow plowing, that's a huge one we've seen across the state of New York and locally. But particularly, Binghamton also has an aging housing stock. Many people have lived in their homes for their entire lives. So it's not uncommon or a stretch to think that perhaps my boiler or furnace or system does need some repairs. And a lot of these citizens don't have the structure, the family structure or network to call a child or a relative or someone else to get a second opinion. They are very trusting and they rely on the information from the person standing right in front of them. And there's a reason that these sorts of individuals prey on the elderly and our vulnerable citizens. And so it is a concern, and it is a problem. And locally, we're very grateful that the Attorney General has taken the lead on addressing this in a number of issues, and certainly the fact that we have local officials, the District Attorney, the Assemblywoman, and others who are committed to working together to address this issue will offer additional protections for residents of our community. So thank you very much, Mr. Attorney General.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you. It's great to be here with my colleagues, and for the people out there who are seeing us today, it's a beautiful day. May not be thinking about heavy snow. Now is the time to prepare. Now is the time to identify who is going to help you in a time of emergency or winter storm. Try and get ahead of it, and don't make decisions at the last minute or after the fact when if people are feeling more vulnerable and a little more desperate, and that's when the worst kind of scammers show up and perpetrate the worst kind of fraud. So I'm very, very pleased to be here today. We're looking forward to continuing to work here and across the state on protecting consumers and helping our communities, and working with our colleagues in law enforcement and our colleagues in local government. As the mayor noted, there are areas now, and more areas, where the federal government is not able to do what it used to do. All of this talk about dysfunction in Washington and gridlock and sequestering of funds, it does have a real effect. And it's up to those of us in state and local government very often now to fill the gaps. I'm very proud of the good working relationship we've all got here. We're committed to working together, whatever the circumstances, on behalf of the people of Binghamton and of New York State. And with that, thank you all. We'll take some questions.